chapters 154 to 155. Vortigern pulled the holy lance Rongominiad out of the chest of the enemy commander, defending the city with a crisp sound. He turned to his magus attendant, Mexis, who was standing nearby, and smiled, blood staining his clothing. "You see, Mexis, I told you I didn't need to personally intervene. They end up fighting amongst themselves." "Our king is wise," praised Mexis. "But I don't understand. Why would they fight amongst themselves?" Vortigern replied, "Because there are too many clever people. People like Ewain, Brastius, and even fools like me are becoming scarce. Don't try to flatter me, Mexis. I know you see through it. You're just trying to make me happy. You don't have to be so cautious. Only you can make me speak the truth." Mexis remained silent. "How many of my soldiers died?" Vortigern inquired. "3, my king," replied Mexis, the runes flashing in his eyes. "The news has already been announced, and still 3 died. It seems they're not afraid enough of me, Vortigern." He chuckled, then asked, "Mexis, do you know what the greatest joy in life is?" "What is it?" "The greatest joy in life is to chase your enemies everywhere, invade their lands, plunder their wealth, and then listen to the cries of their wives and children. It's a pity that I can no longer experience this kind of joy," Vortigern lamented. He then clapped his hands and ordered, "Give the command to slaughter the city. Don't worry about the knights. They have already been eliminated by my holy lance." "Understood." Mexis nodded, and using his spell, informed the various commanders, "Let those poets and bards spread my military exploits far and wide. Whenever there is even a single casualty in any city I pass through, I will slaughter the entire city. From nobles to commoners, I won't spare a single soul," Vortigern declared. He paused for a moment, then chuckled, "I want to see how many people dare to raise their swords against me." Mexis gazed at the newly conquered city in front of them and asked, "Should we also execute the surrendered nobles, my king?" "No," replied Vortigern. "If we do, it will only make them more determined to resist me. I will treat them well and let them witness the fate of those who dare to oppose me." "You truly are wise, my king," Mexis complimented. "This is just how the world operates. Even if a lamb were to be under your crotch, without wisdom and skill, you wouldn't be able to kill or consume it. However, with profound wisdom and clever methods, even a dragon can be defeated with ease." He continued, "Furthermore, I must have complete control over all of Britain before I consider eliminating them." Mexis interjected, "If you were to exterminate them all, my king, it would be difficult to govern your domain." Chuckling, Vortigern responded, "I have no intention of ruling over them." As he spoke, a faint white dragon shadow surrounded him. His eyes shone with golden light, and his holy lance, Rongominiad, emitted a subtle glow. Vortigern patted Mexis on the shoulder before departing with a smile. Mexis gazed at Vortigern's retreating figure and let out a sigh. "My king, I can no longer remain calm and collected around you. You have transcended your humanity and have become a harbinger of fear, a god who controls the fate of others." A complex expression crossed Mexis's face. With the power of the White Dragon and his plunder of Uther's position as the lord of the island, Vortigern had ascended to a level that was nearly godlike. Furthermore, he obtained the holy lance Rongominiad, which had further eroded his character, bringing him even closer to nature. A person of such caliber could no longer be classified as human. "My king, you are now the lord of the island, and the possessor of the holy lance Rongominiad. Although you haven't forgotten your initial intentions, there is still a fundamental disparity between humans and gods," Mexis lamented. "Nevertheless, I will remain by your side until the very end, because I am the only one who understands you. Speak, my Orkney! How could Vortigern seize my kingdom so quickly?" Morgan demanded, staring intently at the messenger. "It's because Orkney surrendered without a battle," the messenger replied weakly. "Vortigern massacred 3 cities and issued a warning. If a single soldier died in any city, he would raze the entire city to the ground." No one had the courage to defy him. "What happened to the king of Orkney?" Gawain asked with growing concern. "Sir Brastias hastily led us to defend the city, but by the time we arrived it had already been engulfed in flames. It was too late. No one survived," the messenger replied with a heavy heart. Boom! A thunderbolt rang through the clear sky. The news left everyone in Orkney stunned and pale. Gawain was so overcome with grief that he stumbled back and slumped down heavily. A wave of panic spread through the city. It was clear that Vortigern had arrived, and worse still, the Saxons had invaded. The news quickly spread throughout the capital like wildfire, leaving people frightened and uneasy. Even the noble kings and aristocrats, who had been laughing and relaxed moments ago, couldn't help but turn pale and serious. Fear and unease gripped everyone, and it seemed as though there was no escape from the imminent danger. The archbishop took charge of the situation, standing at the forefront and addressing the assembled crowd. "Please, everyone, lay down your weapons. The enemy is at our gates. We mustn't turn our swords against our own people." Ewain and Baldwin also stepped forward to persuade the kings. After a brief moment of hesitation, the kings gave the order for their soldiers to sheathe their swords. Ewain then spoke up. "As Vortigern came from Orkney, it's highly likely that he will march towards the Barton Mountains. If Barton Fortress falls, there will be no defense in the northeast of Camelot. Under Vortigern's invasion, all of Wales will be plunged into chaos." Baldwin elaborated on the dire situation and looked at the kings. "My lords, we must set aside our differences for now and unite to drive away the invaders." The kings were somewhat swayed by Baldwin's words, but at that moment, King Mark pointed his finger at Shirou and spoke up. "Driving away invaders is our duty as kings. However, this man is not Arthur, and his origins are suspect. How can we trust him and work together?" Shirou glared at King Mark with a deadly intent and retorted, "King Mark, the enemy is at our doorstep, and yet you continue to sow discord. I strongly suspect that you are the spy sent by Vortigern." The nobles and kings looked around with a sense of despair, unsure of what to do. No one in the room had a relaxed expression on their face. For the schemers, this should have been a perfect opportunity, but it had been disrupted by Vortigern's invasion. As for Shirou, the ceremony should have been a straightforward affair, but it had been turned into a vortex of scheming and uncertainty. King Mark pointed at Shirou and accused him, "Your background is shrouded in mystery and suspicion. No one will trust you or cooperate with you." Shirou looked at King Mark with an icy glare, then drew the caliburn from its sheath and stepped forward onto the platform. "Those who stand here with me have fought by my side and continue to trust me to this day. Therefore, I fear no false accusations from wicked men. I said it back in Tintagel, and I'll say it again here in Camelot. I'm the King of Britain, and anyone who places their trust in me and hands me their sword will bask in the ultimate glory." With a triumphant gesture, he held the caliburn high and declared, "As the red dragon unfurls its wings, the land it soars above shall be its kingdom." The people looked at Shirou in a daze, unsure of whether to trust him or continue to harbor doubts. They were at a loss as to how to handle the situation, uncertain of what to do next. Morgan's voice rang out, breaking the silence. "Attention, soldiers of Orkney, step forward." Responding to her call, the soldiers of Orkney advanced, their eyes fixed on Morgan with anticipation. "Listen up, soldiers of Orkney! It's time to heed King Arthur's orders," she declared with authority. "King Arthur! King Arthur!" The unified chant of the Orkney soldiers echoed through the air, a resounding affirmation of their new loyalty to the King of Britain. King Mark spoke up again. "Other than relying on your sister's popularity, who else supports you?" Shirou didn't respond with words, but instead, he raised the caliburn high. The soldiers of the northern king stood firm and unwavering, but some of them still had doubts and hesitation in their eyes. I have faith in King Arthur. I truly believe he will be an exceptional king." A squad leader named Yule stepped forward and joined the ranks of Orkney. Shirou recognized Yule and nodded. "I will grant you the glory you deserve, Yule." Some people who knew Yule were taken aback by Shirou's recognition of him. "How does he know Yule's name?" they murmured. Furthermore, when Yule stepped forward and pledged his allegiance to King Arthur, other soldiers from different kingdoms became restless and began joining the ranks of Orkney like a steady drizzle. "King Arthur is a just and wise ruler. He will share his glory with us," one soldier exclaimed. "He has led us out of the darkest moments and helped us defeat the terrifying beast. He has danced and sung with us, making him the kind of king we want to follow," another soldier declared. "That king bears the false accusations of others, but he still shines so brightly. He's the kind of king I'd gladly serve," a third soldier added. "That king has sung with us and shown us great care and compassion. He couldn't possibly be a spy. He is the wise and destined king of Britain, and I am honored to follow him," a fourth soldier affirmed. The soldiers of other kingdoms were slowly being swayed by Shirou's charisma and leadership, and his ranks continued to grow. Soldiers from the kingdom of Urians, the kingdom of Nantes, and even King Mark's own kingdom stepped out of their ranks and joined the troops of King Arthur. Many of these soldiers had fought under Shirou's leadership to defeat Cath Palug and had witnessed his bravery and leadership firsthand. As more and more soldiers joined the ranks of King Arthur's army, it became clear that Shirou's charisma and unwavering determination had won over the hearts and minds of the people. "What are you going to do, Bedivere?" Lucan looked at Bedivere, who was walking towards the Orkney troops. With a regretful expression, Bedivere glanced back at Lucan and replied, "I am sorry for leaving after you took care of me for so many years, but I have found a lord to whom I can pledge my allegiance. Thank you for everything." He walked towards the troops without looking back. "So, Bedivere," Lucan spoke softly, "you have found a lord to swear your allegiance to as a knight." He gazed at Bedivere, silently offering his blessings. Like drops of water merging together, people gathered and joined Shirou's troops. In a sudden surge, over 1,000 individuals pledged their allegiance to Shirou. The number of soldiers in Shirou's army immediately swelled to over 2,000. Countless kings were bewildered, and King Mark's face turned livid with anger. He opened his mouth to speak, but his nephew Tristan let out a deep sigh and spoke up from behind him. "Uncle, I am grateful for all you have done for me, but I have found a king to whom I must pledge my allegiance." With these words, Tristan stepped out of the ranks. "Hold on, Tristan," King Mark growled, his face twisted into a ferocious expression. "Are you betraying me?" Tristan maintained his composure as he calmly responded, "I never swore my allegiance to you, so it can hardly be seen as a betrayal. King Arthur, on the other hand, truly grasps the desires and sentiments of his people. Unfortunately, you seem to lack that understanding." With these words, he joined the Orkney army. The situation changed too rapidly for the other kings to react in time, leaving them stunned and speechless. Shirou lifted the sword in his hand and spoke with conviction. "My soldiers, you have placed your trust in me, and I will do the same for you. With this sword, I swear that my glory is your glory." "King Arthur! King Arthur!" The people, nobles, and kings looked on in stunned silence, but Shirou's army echoed his name with passionate shouts. King Mark's expression darkened as he spoke. "Even with cavalry and soldiers, the suspicion surrounding your unknown origins cannot be ignored. Cooperating with you only makes people uneasy." Shirou stared back at King Mark with cold eyes. As a king, one should prioritize the greater good of the situation. In the face of an external invasion, we should work together in unity to resist. Yet you continue to pester me. Tell me, have you already aligned yourself with Vortigern and wish to see us fall apart? "I am a king of honor," King Mark sneered in response. How could I ever be considered a spy? The kings and nobles of Nantes watched Shirou and King Mark with uncertainty, unsure of what to do. It was clear that cooperation was not feasible. Sir Ywain rose to his feet and made a proposal. Vortigern is coming with 80,000 troops and will inevitably split his army into two. One force will attack the Barton Mountain Fortress in the northeast, while the other will assault Caerleon in the northwest. Why not assign King Mark to defend the Barton Mountain Fortress and have Your Excellency Arthur lead the defense of Caerleon? Agreed, Shirou declared as he waved his cloak. The presence of a traitor among us has left me uneasy, and this proposal provides a sound solution. What did you just say? King Mark retorted, his expression icy with anger. Ignoring King Mark's cold stare, Shirou turned to Artoria and Gawain, both of whom were deeply affected by recent events. Speaking in a commanding tone, he said, Artoria, Gawain, how long will you continue to wallow in your sorrow? It's time to gather your strength, unsheathe your swords, and fight by my side. There is no time for despair. Artoria and Gawain met his gaze, gritted their teeth, and replied with determination, Yes. Mounted on his silver horse, Dun Stallion, Shirou surveyed his soldiers with a determined expression. With one hand gripping the reins and the other firmly grasping the caliburn, he bellowed, March forth! The army immediately sprang into action and began to move. Caerleon. Merlin observed Kay as he packed his belongings with a gloomy expression and let out a sigh. Kay? There's no need to be in a hurry. Kay glared at Merlin with a cold stare and retorted, No need to be in a hurry? Listen here, Merlin. If anything happens to Artoria and the king in the capital, I will never let you go. Merlin smiled and replied, The first grand battle of King Arthur won't be held in the capital. Then where will it be? Merlin tapped his staff on the ground and grinned, Right here. Shirou marched at the head of his troops towards Caerleon. To his left marched Gawain, Gaheris, Agravain, and Morgan, while on his right were Artoria, Bedivere, and Tristan. Behind him, a vast ocean of more than 2,000 people followed in his wake. Just half a month ago, he had departed from Caerleon to Camelot without any soldiers by his side. However, upon his return, he was accompanied by over 2,000 people. At that moment, Caerleon was only guarded by 300 of its own guards and 500 soldiers from Lamorak's forces. Shirou's return with over 2,000 people made him the ruler of Caerleon in one swift leap. Vortigern and his army of 80,000 people had attacked Orkney with the power of thunder. Fortunately, Brastias made a timely decision, and the knight who reported the news arrived just in time. As a result, when Shirou's army poured into Caerleon, it had not yet been attacked. Upon entering Caerleon, Shirou and his troops immediately seized control of the city, with Shirou assuming the position of commander. Of all the people Shirou knew, Kay was the most skilled in defensive warfare, and he had previously collaborated with him in the Dream King game. Upon arriving in Caerleon, Shirou's first plan was to find Kay. However, to his surprise, Kay and Merlin were already waiting for him in the castle. Upon seeing Shirou, Merlin smiled and began to speak. However, before he could utter a word, Shirou swiftly grabbed his sleeve and delivered a punch to his gut. Merlin clutched his stomach, doubling over in pain and emitting a groan. I don't have time for you now, Shirou said sternly. Let me get everything in order first, and then I'll deal with you slowly. He called Lamorak over and explained the situation to everyone, outlining his plan for the defense of Caerleon. He then handed over command of the garrison to Kay, with Lamorak as his deputy to assist him. Although Lamorak had not sworn allegiance to Shirou, he still nodded in agreement with the arrangement. Kay was hesitant and expressed his doubts. Is it really wise to entrust such a significant matter to me, my king? I have faith in you and your abilities because you are my knight, Shirou replied confidently. Go ahead and do it. Kay was deeply moved by Shirou's trust in him, and his voice became resolute as he replied, "Yes, Your Majesty. I will do my best to protect Caerleon and its people." Shirou borrowed Agravain from Morgan and had him replace the original steward of Caerleon Castle. Although Morgan was puzzled by the request as Agravain was her shadow and had never dealt with internal affairs, she still granted her dear brother's request and lent Agravain to him. Agravain remained expressionless, neither refusing nor accepting the position of steward. The original steward of Caerleon Castle was dissatisfied with the decision, but with Shirou's large following and Vortigern's looming attack, he reluctantly suppressed his discontent. Shirou appointed Bedivere as his deputy and assigned Agravain as the new steward of Caerleon Castle. As Bedivere looked at the gloomy Agravain, he willingly accepted the task at hand. Unlike Artoria and Agravain, who were introverted, Bedivere had an outgoing personality and sincere emotions. He was able to express his inner feelings freely. Shirou divided his army into 3 groups, assigning specific tasks to each. He placed Artoria in charge of the cavalry, Gawain in charge of the infantry, and Tristan in charge of the archers. Tristan was taken aback by Shirou's trust in him and couldn't help but ask, "My king, don't you have any suspicions about me? Despite pledging my loyalty to you, I am still King Mark's nephew and could potentially conspire with him to betray you." He replied firmly, "If I suspected you, I wouldn't have chosen you. If I have chosen you, I won't suspect you. Tristan, let me witness the beautiful melody of the battlefield through your skills." Tristan was moved by Shirou's trust in him, and even the others were inspired by the king's boldness. What is more inspiring for a knight than the trust of their monarch? With positions and personnel quickly arranged, Shirou allowed his army to disperse and focus on their respective tasks. Artoria cast a hesitant glance towards Kay, but before she could say anything, Shirou placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder and said, "Let's talk about Ector's matter after everything is over." She nodded in agreement. Out of all the people present, only Morgan and Merlin were not assigned any specific tasks. Morgan was his sister and a magus, making it difficult to assign her a specific role. As for Merlin, he preferred to observe rather than actively participate. Despite not being assigned a task, Morgan approached Shirou and asked, "Arthur, is there anything I can help you with?" He had not considered how to utilize Morgan's skills, but Merlin interjected with a suggestion. "Why not have Princess Morgan reinforce the wall's barrier?" Morgan glared fiercely at Merlin and snapped, "Shut up, you perverted waste in women's clothing. As the court mage, it's fine for you to be absent from Camelot most of the time. But with your clairvoyance and wisdom, you must have foreseen the chaos that would occur at Arthur's coronation ceremony, yet you did nothing. How can you face my father who entrusted Arthur to you? I really want to tear you apart right now." Merlin weakly replied, "But you can't beat me." Morgan's anger exploded, causing her breathing to become rapid. Shirou, concerned that the situation might escalate, quickly intervened. He coughed a few times and grabbed her arm. "Sister, could you please reinforce the defense of the castle walls?" Morgan's gaze remained sharp as a knife, and she continued to glare at Merlin before turning to him and saying, "Okay, I will help you. I am not like some white-haired waste." With that, she lifted her dress and left the castle. Thud, thud, thud. As she walked away, Morgan's footsteps were heavy, indicating her intense anger towards Merlin. It was evident that she was trying to hold in her frustration towards him. He watched Morgan leave before turning to Merlin and pondering for a moment. "You knew about Sir Ector's situation, didn't you?" Merlin's fluffy white hair drooped slightly at the mention of Ector's name, and he replied in a somewhat indifferent tone, "He chose his own path." Shirou pressed on, "I am asking you, did he really commit suicide? Or was he forced to do so?" Merlin shook his head. No one could force him. Despite his age and inability to wield his old great sword, he remained one of Britain's finest knights. He had no weaknesses, except for Britain itself. If Artoria was the current Arthur, would things have escalated to this point? No, they wouldn't have. Why? Shirou furrowed his brows. Merlin explained, because Lily doesn't know how to deceive, manipulate hearts, or present herself as flawless. Instead, she brings people comfort and puts them at ease, unlike you, who often instills fear in them. Shirou smiled wryly and remarked, being a king is already difficult, but being a king of a country that has been without one for 10 years is even more so. A wise king can make free people afraid, but a foolish king can make hopeful people angry. He understood what Merlin meant. Nearly 10 years had passed since Uther's death, and the kingdom had been without a king for that entire time. The northern kings had also withstood Vortigern's attacks for 10 years without Uther's leadership. They had enjoyed their freedom for a decade and had managed to survive without any major issues caused by the Red Dragon. Naturally, they thought they could do without a king. However, at this moment, Arthur had pulled the sword from the stone and emerged. To the people, he was just a bumpkin who had come out of nowhere, wanting to climb to the top and look down on them. They resented the fact that they had to be subservient to someone they deemed unworthy. How could they endure it? If Arthur was a puppet that they could control, then they might have supported him. But he wasn't a puppet. He was a lion with sharp claws, intent on devouring their rights. How could they not resist? I made a mistake. I exposed myself too early. Shirou sighed inwardly. The speeches delivered in various places had stirred up the sensitive nerves of the powerful forces in Camelot and even across Britain. Shirou had revealed his hand too early. He had intended to win people's hearts, but it had caused a backlash. However, if it were Artoria, it wouldn't be like this. She never became a king out of selfishness, but rather viewed it as a duty and wouldn't have stirred up the sensitive nerves of any faction. No faction would have truly treated her as a king, but rather as a necessary tool for defeating Vortigern and foreign enemies. After the war, these factions would have waited for her to make a mistake and then pull her down. This is why Mordred would quickly gain the support of the kings when Artoria embarked on her expedition to Rome. Mitigating conflicts is a science, and as a leader, it's an even bigger science. Shirou let out a sigh before asking, "What are the chances of us winning a direct confrontation against Vortigern?" "Less than 10%. Shirou's frown deepened. "That low? Are you sure you're not lying to me?" "There's no deception here," Merlin replied, shaking his head. "As the court mage, it is my duty to provide you with the wisdom of the gods for your final journey as the successor to the throne. I have no reason to lie to you," Merlin explained. "Vortigern has already retrieved the Holy Lance Rongominiad and now possesses the power of the White Dragon. He has taken Uther's place as the island's lord and has become the embodiment of this land, akin to a god of this era. His power is directly linked to the amount of land he controls, and currently he has gained control over almost 60% of it. Given these circumstances, whether it's you, me, Princess Morgan, or all of Britain, we can only rely on 2 individuals to face him in a direct confrontation and emerge victorious." "Who are these 2 individuals?" "One of them is Cath Palug, who has absorbed evil and transformed into the beast." Shirou furrowed his brow and spoke. "You mentioned that my capacity for evil is nearly at its limit. If Cath Palug were to transform back into the beast, I wouldn't be able to absorb any more of its evil. The catastrophe brought on by the beast could very well surpass the terror of Vortigern, and in the end, we might not survive. So who is this second person?" Merlin grinned and replied, "The second one is the very person you've been concerned about. The dead apostle, King of the Moon." "Crimson Moon?" Shirou's eyes narrowed in shock as he exclaimed with disbelief, Does it truly exist? And it's still in Britain?" Merlin reassured him. "Please don't worry. Based on my observations, its true form remains on the mainland, and what has arrived on the island is merely a vessel possessed by its will." "What is it doing in Britain?" It's hard to say. So how can we defeat Vortigern? By transforming into nature, he has ascended to the status of a god. The more land he controls, the more powerful he becomes. To defeat him, we must, of course, reclaim all the territory he has seized. In the end, it's still a battle of kings. He sighed before posing another question. What would happen if Vortigern were to take over Britain? The Age of Gods would be restored and rejected by the Throne of Heroes. This historical node would also become a lost belt. Have you heard of the concept of lost belts? If not, just imagine that if Vortigern were to occupy all of Britain, we would all disappear. Even you who come from the future would be unable to escape this fate. Merlin paused and then flashed a smile. But don't worry, I will definitely hide in Avalon if that day comes. Shirou,